Chapter 2. February 17th was Lucian's 33rd birthday, and she, Judith, Fiona Ann, and Ruth were all dressed to impress and ready to go out for a good time. Jean promised to meet them later after she closed her boutique. Ruth heard about a new club in San Francisco, so they decided to go there after enjoying a nice dinner. They also reserved hotel rooms so they didn't have to drive home after their night of partying. Not long after they arrived at the Cheesecake Factory, Jean joined them with everything but her nipples hanging out of her blouse. "Got milk?" Judith teased her friend. "Shut up, girl," Jean laughed. "I paid a pretty penny for these things, so somebody gon' see 'em. If I'm lucky, I'll find somebody to play with them." "I know that's right," Fiona Ann said, giving her own implants a little shake before reaching across the table to high-five Jean. "I don't know which one of y'all is worst," Lucian stated after they placed their drink orders. "Although I do have to say you're a bit more conservative than normal, Fiona Ann." "That can only mean one thing. She's got a man," they all said in unison. Fiona Ann admitted that she met someone, but she wanted to see if it was going anywhere before she talked about him. "Well, can we at least know his name?" Judith prodded. Fiona Ann sat silently for a few moments as the women stared at her. "Mojo," she uttered. Lucian, Judith, and Jean burst out laughing. "What is he, a stripper?" Lucian asked, then did a few body rolls in her seat. "Don't stop, get it," Judith sang as she bounced on her chair, drawing the attention of a group of young men at the table across from them. "Fiona, what is his real name?" "I am not about to be calling a grown man no damn Mojo, you feel me?" That's all you heifers get for now," Fiona Ann smiled. A few minutes later their drinks arrived and Judith proposed a toast. The five of them raised their glasses. "To the sweetest, cutest, most amazing sister anyone could ever have. Happy birthday, Lucian Bell." "Here's to being bad tonight and having some real fun," Judith said and let a devious little grin spread across her lips. "Amen to that," Jean said, as she clinked glasses with everyone. The group of guys who'd been watching them raised their glasses in a toast too. They offered their assistance in helping the women be bad and have fun. "No thanks. Y'all need to go through puberty before you can do anything with us," Judith said of the very youthful-looking young men. "Judith," Lucian shrieked, nudging her sister's arm. "What? Look at them. The oldest one is about 12 years old." She laughed loudly. Some of the other diners looked at the group of guys and laughed as well. Embarrassed, the young men finished their beers and pretended Judith and her friends didn't exist. The five of them continued to laugh over dinner, more drinks, and delicious cheesecake. Lucian opened her gifts and thanked the ladies for making her feel so special. Everyone was having a good time, but the women couldn't help noticing that Ruth checked her watch a lot. Fiona Ann asked why she was in a hurry and Ruth said she was just anxious to get to the club to dance. "Give me this damn phone," Judith said, as she attempted to grab Jean's cell phone. "Who keeps texting you?" "Oh, it's nothing," she said, wrestling the phone from her friend. You met some man, didn't you?" "Secretive ass," Judith teased. She knew why Jean was so guarded when it came to the men she dated. After a good friend of theirs from high school got caught cheating with Jean's boyfriend, she never brought men around her friends again. Judith tried not to take offense, but it hurt her feelings to know that her best friend didn't trust her enough to introduce the man in her life. "Let's get out of here." Soon after, Jean climbed into her red 2010 Audi S4 and drove around to the other side of the parking lot to follow the group. The other women got into Judith's silver 2011 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Every time Ruth got into it, she remembered that Lucian purchased one in black not long after Judith bought hers. Instead of the younger sister trying to be like the older one, it was the other way around. Fiona Ann and Ruth often joked that it was only a matter of time before Lucian gave up her job raising money for the Children's Word of Hospitals to join Judith as a buyer for Bay Area clothing stores. "What's the address of the club?" Lucian asked Ruth, as she prepared to punch it into the GPS. A few minutes later they were back on the highway heading to what Ruth called the hottest new club in San Francisco, or so they thought. All of a sudden the GPS went silent and Judith had no clue which way to go. Ruth thought she'd written the directions down and rifled through her purse trying to find them. Fiona Ann was the only one who found the situation amusing, and the more turned around they got, the more she laughed. No doubt the 2 Long Island iced teas she consumed played a role in how silly she was acting and her need to tell them about each time her GPS malfunctioned. Though the women couldn't help but laugh when Fiona Ann told them about the time she was trying to find Walmart in a different city, and the GPS directed her to someone's house. After a few wrong turns and an illegal U-turn, Jean called Judith's phone. "What the hell are y'all doing?" she snapped. Lucian explained what happened and Jean told them to pull over on the side of the road. She entered the address into her GPS and led the way. Calculating route. "Oh, now this bitch wanna talk," Judith said of the female GPS voice. "Shut up," she shouted before shutting it off. Moments later they pulled into the nearly full parking lot of the chic nightclub. $45 each, Fiona Ann snapped when the host told them the price of admission. "What kind of damn club is this? You know what? You ladies are so beautiful that I think I'll let you in for half price. Or how about we just do $20 each? And your phone number," he winked at Fiona Ann. "Now see, that's more like it." She smiled and pulled a $20 bill out of her purse. She passed on giving him her number. After they each paid and thanked the host, the ladies walked inside and Fiona Ann, and Jean chest bumped each other with their implants. I knew these puppies were good for something. Jean laughed and snapped her fingers and rolled her hips to the loud music. A woman on her cell phone walked by yelling at someone to get there before 11 o'clock or the $20 cover charge would increase to $45. Judith and Lucian looked at each other and burst out laughing. Then they all made their way through the crowd of 200 or so partygoers to find a good seat. Jean's eye was drawn to the lounge area all decked out in red, a red leather sectional, red tables and ottomans, and overhead lights that gave the entire area a red tint. It was in the perfect spot as well. The largest of the 3 bars was directly behind it and the smaller dance floor right in front of it. The lounge also offered the best view of the club. "Ooh, let's sit here," Jean said and was about to take a seat on the couch when one of the cocktail waitresses rushed over to inform the ladies they were in the VIP section and needed to leave immediately. "It figures Ms. High Society would gravitate to the ballers section," Judith teased, hoping to calm the rage she knew was brewing inside of her best friend. Jean was all about appearances and didn't take kindly to what she considered a low-class bitch talking down to her. "Girl, shut up. You was just about to plant your ass over here too," Jean said, even though her eyes were still on the cocktail waitress. "Look, I didn't want to sit over here anyway." "Come on y'all," Ruth said. It soon became clear why she was in such a rush to get to the club when she tugged at the high-waist tummy shaper she'd squeezed into and made a beeline for a large booth across the room. 5 men and 2 young women were having drinks and attempting a conversation over the music. "Hey, baby," Ruth said, to a very sexy, light-skinned young man who was definitely surprised to see her. Hey, you," he said, scrambling to his feet. "What's up? What you doing here?" He frowned, moving her further away from his friends. "Boom, excuse you. Why are you pushing me?" "Oh, my bad," he said, releasing Ruth from his grasp. "What's up?" "Well, we've been seeing each other for a few months, so I thought it was time that my friends met your friends," she smiled, seemingly oblivious to how upset he was. "Come here, ladies. I want y'all to meet my little boo. This is Wilbur Fuller. Wilbur, these are my girls Fiona Ann, Judith, Lucian, and Jean." Judith and Lucian looked at each other as Jean shifted her weight from one foot to the other. It was a tense and awkward moment that made them all feel uncomfortable. With the exception of Fiona Ann, no one had heard a word about Wilbur Fuller, but even she wasn't expecting Ruth to ambush him like that. "I feel a face crack moment coming on," Fiona Ann mumbled, as she tried to pull Ruth away and spare her from embarrassment. "So who are these handsome young men?" Ruth asked, as she made her way back to the booth. When Wilbur didn't say anything, she introduced herself. "Are you his mom?" One of the young women asked, innocently. "Nah, I ain't his dem." "Yo, girl, chill with that," Wilbur said to the young woman. "Hey Wilbur, guys, it was nice to meet you, but we're gonna head over to find some seats and..." Nah, y'all ain't gotta go nowhere. It's plenty of room right here," one of Wilbur's friends said to Judith. They was just about to leave anyway. The young women didn't appreciate being dismissed and left in a huff. "See, it's plenty of room," he smiled, showing a mouth full of gold teeth. After 30 minutes, Judith, Lucian, Fiona Ann, and Jean decided they'd had enough. Wilbur's friends were nice enough but extremely immature. However, it was watching Ruth make a fool out of herself that the women could no longer take. If she wasn't trying to sit in Wilbur's lap, then she was hanging all on him or turning his face to make him look at her whenever he spoke to someone else. Fiona Ann tried to get Ruth's attention and let her know that the way she sat, trying to look sexy, was not working. In that position, the tummy shaper she wore flattened the top of her stomach and repositioned the flab into a pudgy blob. "Yo, don't forget your friend," Wilbur called when the 4 women headed to another part of the club. "Excuse you," Ruth snarled. "Look, I'll holla at you later, bite. Right now I just want to chill with my boys. So won't you gone with your crew and we'll hook up another time." Embarrassed, Ruth pulled Wilbur out of earshot of the others and gave him a piece of her mind. She didn't appreciate being dismissed or treated like one of the girls that were sitting with him earlier, one she warned had better not return. Ruth also let it be known that she'd withdraw her financial support if he didn't change his attitude. "Well, I can withdraw shit too," Wilbur said, rubbing his hand across his crotch. Ruth followed his hand with her eyes and a wicked smile spread across her lips. Look at you. You know you want it. So quit tripping, little mama, and go chill with your friends. We'll hook up and then you can have all you want." He smiled devilishly, touching his crotch again. Wilbur planted a quick kiss on her lips, then watched Ruth walk off with her friends. "So that's the little muppet you've been boning?" one of his friends asked. Wilbur gave him the finger and they all laughed. "To each his own, but my choice is definitely Judith. Fiona Ann's next on the list." "Yeah, right, like your broke ass got a snowball's chance in hell of getting a woman that fine. You better stick to them hood rats you be chasing and call it good." "Judith," Wilbur snorted, not letting on to the fact that he felt exactly the same way. It was her face and scrumptious body he'd be thinking of the next time he climbed into Ruth's bed. "You shouldn't have done that." "To none of us," Fiona Ann scolded Ruth once they took their seats in the VIP section. Jean refused to let that cocktail waitress have the last word, and she found out from one of the bartenders how to reserve the space. Even though her friends thought it was ridiculous to pay $200 to sit on the red sofa for an hour, Jean couldn't rest until her behind was comfortably placed in the VIP area, where she belonged. And she made that waitress wait on all of them hand and foot. "Why would you ambush the boy like that?" Fiona Ann asked. "I didn't ambush him," He told me he and his boys were coming to this club and I thought I'd surprise him, that's all. And how old is the boy anyway? Jean asked. That man is 27 years old. And where did y'all meet? Judith asked, surprised that a hottie like Wilbur was interested in Ruth. I helped him with his after-school program and, oh shit, that didn't come out right, Ruth stated when the women burst out laughing. He runs the after-school program at Ruth's. Oh, never mind, bitches. Forget y'all, she giggled. Anyway, Wilbur's really mature for his age. He's got a good head on his shoulders. And he knows how to handle his business in the bedroom too, you feel me? I think we've got something really special. Bitch, check your motherboard. That boy ain't tripping off you. Shut up, Judith. Ruth snapped. What would you know about it anyway? When has your man-hating ass ever been in love? In defense of her sister, Lucian shared the story of Rory Michaels, Judith's first love. She was crazy in love with him throughout high school, but he broke her heart and left wounds that still weren't fully healed. Judith didn't like talking about Rory, and the mere mention of his name put her in a sour mood. Jean thumped Lucian's knee, hoping she would take the hint and stop talking about Judith's love life. She stopped talking about Rory only to bring up Sidney Reed, the man who'd been in love with her sister for 12 years. Alone in her spacious 2-bedroom, 2-bath house in Union City, Judith couldn't stop thinking about Rory. Thankfully, Jean changed the subject the night before, but it didn't stop Judith from reliving the heartache she endured from her high school sweetheart. Rory was a year older and the cutest thing she'd ever seen in her life. He was 6 feet, 5 inches with milk chocolate-colored skin and the sexiest brown eyes. Rory was also Judith's first lover and she fell head over heels for him. No one could tell her they weren't going to get married and live happily ever after. Rory, however, had different plans. As the captain of the basketball team, he had girls chasing him all the time and he bedded as many of them as possible. Too many nights Judith cried herself to sleep wondering why she wasn't enough for Rory. Then, instead of leaving him alone, she transformed herself into a sex kitten that was willing to do anything to keep him, including inviting other girls to their bed or experiencing pain merely for his pleasure. Judith thought she was the belle of the ball when Rory came home from college to take her to the senior prom. She planned for it like it was her wedding day and made sure everything was perfect. All eyes were on the beautiful couple when Rory and Judith glided across the dance floor, and she couldn't have been happier. It was the best night of her life, until Rory excused himself to the bathroom and stayed gone for over 20 minutes. Judith went searching and found him in a dim hallway between another girl's legs. Completely humiliated and heartbroken, Judith ran out of the school gymnasium and cried for the 2 blocks it took to get to Sidney's house. He and Lucian were good friends throughout high school, but it was no secret he'd always had a crush on Judith. Without a word, Sidney took her into his arms and let her cry until she had no tears left. Afterwards, he cleaned her mascara-streaked face and helped Judith out of her prom dress. In nothing but her pink bra and panties, she wrapped herself in his arms again. He knew it was the wrong time, but he couldn't resist the urge to plant kisses on her shoulder, neck, cheek, and lips. I love you, Sidney had whispered and made love to Judith for the first time. What they shared was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and he thought they'd always be in love. For a few weeks after that night, the two of them spent as much time together as possible. Sidney thought he finally had the relationship he'd always wanted with Judith, but just as quickly as she walked into his world, she left it. After her graduation, she told Sidney to forget about her and go on with his life. Then she left to spend the summer in Mississippi with Evelyn's parents, and Sidney left and threw himself into his courses at California State University in Sacramento. 12 years later, and Sidney was still involved in an on-again, off-again relationship with Judith. His family urged him to leave her alone and move on with his life, but he couldn't. Sidney loved Judith and still believed she would finally stop fighting what they had and marry him. Though, sometimes he did get fed up with the whole situation and got involved with other women. And just when he thought he could be serious about someone else, Judith showed up and made him fall for her all over again. Sidney sincerely hoped she would come around soon. He was 32 years old and wanted to have children and build a life with a woman who wanted the same thing. You all right? Lucian asked after she entered Judith's home and found her sulking in the bedroom. Your butt better not be in here tripping off Rory. You've got a good man who loves you and wants to make you happy. Let go of all that old mess and live your life. Rory has. And how do we know that? Judith frowned. Okay, look, I wasn't going to say anything, but me and Mama ran into Rory's mom in the mall, and she showed us pictures of him, his wife, and their new baby girl. He's happy, Matt, and you need to leave all that junk in the past and be happy too. Tears filled Judith's eyes. For years she fantasized about the day Rory came crawling back begging for her forgiveness. She imagined him somewhere pining away for her, agonizing over how badly he treated her. Hearing that he was a happily married man and a new father killed any hope of him coming back. Sadness swept over Judith and a headache quickly followed. Later that afternoon, against her better judgment, Judith searched for Rory on Facebook. Her heart sank when a profile picture appeared of him and his beautiful bride on their wedding day. And if that wasn't torturous enough, she hit the friend request button before she could stop herself. Judith soon regretted doing so and was about to cancel the request when she realized he was online and had accepted her as a friend immediately. An instant message from Rory appeared on the bottom of her screen. Yo Matt, I'm about to check out your page and see how sexy you still are, it read. Me too, she replied. And like a fool, she went to his page and looked through every one of his albums. There were pictures of his wife getting ready on their wedding day, the shot of Rory with tears rolling down his face when he saw her for the first time, their first kiss, and first dance as husband and wife. Tears poured down Judith's face as she wondered why that couldn't have been her and Rory like it was supposed to be. Though, for as heartbreaking as those pictures were, the ones of Rory and his wife welcoming their baby girl into the world were worst. She was so beautiful. And Judith could see and feel how much Rory loved his daughter, making her tears fall harder and faster. Judith was about to log off when another instant message from Rory appeared on her screen. That time he provided his cell phone number and asked her to call since he wasn't much for typing. Obviously a glutton for punishment, she grabbed her cell phone and dialed the number. He answered on the first ring. "Yo, Mad, what's good? How you been, girl?" The sound of his silky, deep voice made Judith's heart skip a beat and a smile spread across her lips. Her entire face lit up when he said he'd moved back to the area, to Milpitas, and asked to see her. Rory said he would be at work until 6 o'clock that evening if she wanted to stop by his shop. He and his best friend owned a successful garage where they repaired any and every kind of vehicle. That came as no surprise to Judith. Rory was always good with his hands. She rushed to her bedroom to change into a form-fitting black skirt that hugged her curves, a white blouse that showed just the right amount of cleavage, and a wide red belt that accentuated her small waist and complemented the red stilettos she slipped onto her feet. The unseasonably warm weather made it so she didn't need a coat. Judith slicked her long, brown hair into a tight bun and put on a pair of silver hoop earrings. Rory always liked when she wore her hair back. "Your face is so beautiful. I want to see it all," he used to say. A few minutes later Judith jumped into her Jeep and made the 20-minute drive to Rory's garage. She took one last look at herself in the rearview mirror and added a dab more of her burgundy lip gloss. Then she steadied her nerves and walked inside. "Lord, have mercy, Jesus," a man shouted when Judith entered. She blushed. "I don't know what you're selling, but I'll buy it all." "All right, Mr. Jenkins, calm down before you have a heart attack," Rory teased, as he made his way towards Judith. He looked amazing in a pair of jeans and a St. Louis Rams t-shirt. "Come here, girl. Give me some love," Rory smiled then embraced his former lover. The smell of his cologne and the feel of his body next to hers made Judith swoon. She almost didn't let go when he pulled away. "Damn, Mad, look at you. But I don't know why I'm acting surprised. You were always beautiful," he smiled and hugged her again. "It's so good to see you." Judith thought she would melt when Rory took her by the hand and introduced her to everyone in his shop. He asked if she was in a hurry because he wanted to talk to her. Judith smiled when he put his hand on the small of her back and led her into his office. Within a few seconds that smile slid off her face and she felt as if she'd been hit in the gut. "Hey, baby, I got someone I want you to meet," Rory said, ushering Judith in front of him. "This is my wife, Alyssa Michaels." "Alyssa, baby, this is an old friend from school, Judith Lawson. And this little lady right here is my daughter Aurora," he cooed, taking the 7-month-old out of his wife's arms. At that moment Judith wished she could have dissolved into the floor. She was annoyed at the fact that Rory said Alyssa Michaels as if she didn't know that. And Judith resented him introducing her as an old friend when she was a hell of a lot more than that. "It's wonderful to meet you," Alyssa said, genuinely. Then to Judith's surprise, the woman embraced her. "You're so pretty. And where did you get those shoes, girl? Those are banging." "Look away, Alyssa, look away," Rory teased. "I have to work overtime just to support her shoe habit, Mad. Ain't that right, Aurora?" He smiled brightly, bouncing the baby in his arms. The last thing Judith desired was to be a part of the cutesy crap happening around her. All she wanted to do was run and get as far away from Rory and his perfect little life as she could. She was about to make an excuse to leave when someone called Rory and he placed Aurora in her arms before going to find out what was going on in the garage. For some reason the baby laughed and the sound put a smile on Judith's face and broke her heart all at the same time. She held Aurora close and inhaled her sweet, baby scent while gently rubbing her curly mop of hair. Tears began to well in Judith's eyes so she gave Aurora to her mother, said a quick goodbye, and hightailed it out of the office. "Yo, Mad, where you going?" Rory called, jogging behind her. "I was hoping we could grab a cup of coffee or something." "I need to talk to you," he said, his sexy eyes sparkling. Everything inside of Judith told her to get in her truck and drive away, but as was often the case with stupidity, she agreed to join him. They made idle chit-chat during the walk to the diner at the end of the block. "So what did you want to talk to me about?" Judith asked, after they both received a cup of coffee. Rory grabbed her hands from across the table and stared deep into her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mad. How I did you back in the day was foul and I feel ashamed of myself for the way I acted. I used to blame it on being young, but I know that's no excuse. You were a good girl and didn't deserve some knucklehead like me playing around with your heart. I hope you can forgive me, Mad, because I'm really sorry. I've got a daughter now and I'd beat the hell out of a dude if he treated her the way I treated you. I'm so sorry and I wish there was something I could do to make it up to you." That devil in Judith, the one that wanted to prove she could have Rory if she wanted him. The one that wanted to feel like she mattered told him there was something he could do to make it up to her. "Oh yeah, and what's that?" He smiled, licking his lips seductively. "Come take a ride with me and find out." Rory was silent for a few moments as he stared at her and kept smiling. "Yo, Mad, I'm flattered, right? I really am. but I'm doing my little family thing, you know. Alyssa's a good woman and she deserves my respect and loyalty. Yo, Mad, where you going? Hey, don't leave like. Completely and utterly humiliated, Judith ran to her truck and took off, not wanting to see Rory again in her life. Tears ran down her cheeks as she wondered why she hadn't been worth his respect and loyalty. Why wasn't she good enough to be his wife and the mother of his baby girl? Why? She screamed. The thought of going home to an empty house was unbearable. And Judith knew she couldn't take the tongue lashing she would get from her sister and friends if she confessed what she'd just done. There was only one place Judith could go and feel safe and not be judged. An hour later she arrived in Oakland and pulled in front of the law offices. Sydney ran with his father and older brother. Why won't you leave my brother alone? Shelby Reed, Jr., asked when he spotted Judith in the lobby waiting for the elevator. He's met someone and things are going well. So if you care about him, like you claim, then let him have a life with a woman who actually loves him. Think about Sid for once. Before Judith could respond, the elevator doors opened and Sydney's clean-shaven, pretty boy face lit up when he saw her. Shelby, Jr., let out a long sigh knowing his brother was going to break Joanna's heart to go back to the woman who always broke his. Come here, baby, Sydney said, recognizing that Judith was upset. She leaned into his sleek, 6'5" muscular frame and he held her as she dissolved into tears. Judith wrapped her arms around Sydney's neck and gently rubbed his dark brown hair that he kept cut close to his scalp. She knew that turned him on. And at that moment Judith needed a man to desire her. She needed Sydney to want her more than anything. The next morning Judith awoke to Sydney's light brown eyes fixed on her as he smiled and gently rubbed her back. He was incredible the night before and made her forget all about the debacle with Rory, just as he'd done 12 years ago. So are you ready? He asked, smiling at her. Judith asked with a wicked little grin. She loved Sydney's smile, the way his lips curled up slightly and his eyes twinkled as if he had a secret. And the slight rasp in his voice turned her on. He was so sexy and her eyes traveled the length of his freshly showered body. Ready for what? To go pack up your stuff and move in with me. Are you ready to quit playing around and marry me? He asked, planting a kiss on her hand. Judith pulled the sheet over her naked body as she turned over onto her back then sat up. She ran a hand through her wild hair and gave a self-conscious wipe to her mouth. Do you think we can have breakfast before we get into all of that? I'm starving. No, you're stalling, Sydney said, as he planted a kiss on her neck. But I'll make you something special. After all that wild, freaky-ass shit you was doing last night you probably do need some nourishment, he laughed. Shut up, Judith giggled. Then she got up to shower and dress. Over breakfast Sydney asked if she was ready to tell him what sent her into his arms. They'd been on this merry-go-round for years so there was no point in pretending. Judith told him about Rory and how stupid she felt for looking him up in the first place. Sydney vowed she would be loved and treasured every day of their lives together if she were with him. Please, Judith, stay with me. You don't have to work anymore or worry about anything because I'll take care of everything you need. I love you. Judith opened her mouth to say something when her phone beeped letting her know she had a text message. Maybe we should take that ride after all. Love, Rory.